Throughout the 1980s and into the 1990s, Sega was one of the most prolific arcade developers in the world, with some of their most famous arcade titles being their racing games. Starting all the way back in 1981 with Turbo, the first racer to feature changing backgrounds and scenery, the company continued to push the boundaries of the genre for years to come. Nearly every arcade racer they released included some kind of notable innovation, with Hang-On introducing a more immersive control scheme where players would straddle a bike and tilt in order to steer. Power Drift allowed individual sprites to be rotated along with being scaled to create the illusion of three-dimensional graphics, and Virtua Racing utilized Sega's new Model 1 arcade board to produce 3D polygonal graphics that were more advanced than anything else seen before. Indy 500 took arcade ports to a low not seen since Pac-Man on Atari. However, one of Sega's most famous arcade racers was Sega Rally Championship, released in 1994. The first big departure here was the theming, as instead of being set on circuits or roads as was typical for the time, the game featured rally racing over a number of different environments and conditions. Another thing unique for the time was how different physical properties were implemented for different surfaces in order to better provide the sensation of driving over multiple types of terrain. The gameplay was simple yet addictive, with players needing to pass a number of slower opponents across different environments, all while racing against a timer. Completing the first 3 stages of the game in first unlocked a bonus stage as well as the end credits. Sega Rally proved to be a massive hit, ending up as one of the highest grossing arcade titles of 1995, with particular praise for its driving physics and graphics. The game did even better when it was ported onto the Sega Saturn, becoming one of only a few Saturn games to sell more than 1 million copies and even being hailed as the killer app that would finally turn the system's fortunes around. The success of Sega Rally Championship made a sequel a no-brainer, even if the Saturn port had ultimately failed to prevent from happening. Sega Rally 2 released in early 1998, improving upon its predecessor in nearly every way. Along with being a huge graphical leap over the original, the game featured an increased number of cars, with the total amount increasing from 3 to 8. As for the tracks, the number remained the same, albeit with the inclusion of a new snowy stage taking advantage of Sega's new Model 3 arcade hardware. Much like the first, Sega Rally 2 also received a memorable home console port, this time for the Sega Dreamcast. Beginning development in 1998, the Dreamcast port of Sega Rally 2 was intended as a launch title for the upcoming system in Japan. However, in order to better meet the deadline, the game was ported using the simpler Windows CE tools supported by the console as opposed to Sega's more advanced development kits. As a result of this, the game took a hit in the graphical department, with noticeable pop-in and fog present throughout. Most infamously though was its inconsistent frame rate, which despite targeting 60 frames a second only reaches around 45 most of the time, and often drops well below even that. This gets so bad that in my experience, it can even become downright distracting in the wrong circumstances. However, these problems could be viewed as a necessary evil, so long as the game still met the launch deadline in November 1998. It was released 2 months later. Despite Sega Rally 2 having missed the Dreamcast launch in Japan, the console's North American release was still only slated for September of 1999, meaning that there was plenty of time to iron out the issues with the game before its international release. Sega Rally 2 hit US store shelves in November 1999, and was virtually unchanged from its Japanese release. They say the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Yeah, that checks out.